Welcome to TransformHer, where we ignite audacity and break barriers. Our aim on this show is to empower African women with tangible resources and practical insight for your journey to the C-suite or leadership in your entrepreneurial venture. Together, we are sure to usher in a new era of inclusive leadership that is sure to drive profound growth across the African continent. I'm Ifoma Williams, your transformative guide, and we'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back. Today's episode, Multidimensional Excellence, Balancing Success Across Life's Spectrum. Very phenomenal topic. And we're lucky to have no other than Mrs. Lilian Olubi, who has successfully navigated diverse multiple sectors simultaneously. She has defied conventional boundaries and wisdom, leveraging her skills in these diverse sectors. Lilian, you are most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Wow. You know, I was reading your profile and I thought to myself, where do I even begin to speak to Lilian about success? And I'm delighted because there's so much to glean from your journey across multiple industries, diverse career paths. The first question I want to ask you is, you have extensive experience in the capital markets, right?
Yes.
And you have traversed to the creative arts and then social entrepreneurship. Just walk us through this amazing journey.
Okay, thank you. And I actually should start with saying that I love it. I love this season of my life. I love this expression. You know,
Fantastic.
I think it's such a privilege, you know, to have all these parts of you being fully expressed. And I've been in finance for, as you rightly said, you know, this is the 25th year, actually.
25?
Yes.
Wow, I have a little secret to share. I was 6 years old when she went into finance. Let's go figure my age.
Yes, indeed. So it's been an interesting while. It has been very purely finance and purely focused more on capital markets and public equity in particular. I have had the privilege of leading businesses at different life cycles and gained tremendous experience, which we may or may not get to later in the conversation. And finance has been the heart. When I knew what I wanted to do, it was finance. Mm-hmm. It was capital markets. My father was actually in the industry, so I've always sort of, you know, known about the subsector and been very interested in it. But when we talk about, you know, how, you know, we move to these different areas, and we were talking about it just a few minutes ago,
Yes.
about how, you know, life is very interesting, how the threads literally start weaving from a long time when we were smaller, right? So even though we explain these moments as pivotal moments now, there's always been a connecting point that we didn't just come to it. But I remember clearly that many years into finance, into working, I started feeling a little restless. And I think it happens with most people in this similar industry. You tend to feel, you know, discontentment, you sort of feel, and then a lot of us, not everybody, you start to sort of, you know, you're seeking some kind of significance and seeking some kind of impact, or you have passions and various interests that you want to express. Mm-hmm. And I was just feeling restless and feeling like, you know, I was tired of this. But luckily, thankfully, I didn't, you know, jump out. I decided at that time to just try to give my time to those things that I liked. So, for example, I had a friend who was doing, who had a non-profit business, and he was training young graduates in business communication skills. I was volunteering. My industry community started doing these annual conferences. They always needed support. I was volunteering. So I was doing all these things that were, you know, just making me feel more...
preparing you, if you like, unwittingly.
Yes, but also giving me some expression of those things that I see, you know, I perhaps was frustrated about not expressing. So I was happy that I was serving, and I wanted to impact, and I wanted to do this and do that, and I was kind of doing those things with volunteer work. But also fast forward to many years after, in the most interesting time of my career, when, you know, I had co-founded a business. We had raised this business to some good level of success, and then we had some challenges as well, and eventually led to the sale of that business to a global institution, which I still, you know, sit on now as the CEO. And I remember that at that time of transition, I felt that I was now done. You know how I just thought, I've been in this industry for so long, I just felt it was time. But, you know, and speaking to these pivotal moments that help us, you know, to pursue these things, I was literally with a friend of mine who I consider like a peer mentor.
Right.
We were talking just on a casual day, and I was telling her about my frustrations and all of that, and we were just sharing different life issues. And she said something interesting to me that, you know, she felt a lot of women were leaving their career paths a little too early, and that there were not too many people at the top. And that I had garnered all this experience. She was reminding me of all these, how many years of finance experience, and that why do I just want to drop off now? That there's so many excuses that we sometimes give, if it's family, if it's interest. And her submission to me, which made sense, was that all these things you want to do, you can still do it. As a matter of fact, you're actually still doing them. And not only did she have that good counsel, she actually also started to bring some interesting opportunities my way of things that she thought I would like.
Right.
And I was getting my hands involved in those things. So a lot of the things had a slightly organic nature to it.
Right.
And so if we speak, for example, of the creative art space, it was something that came, you know, following a period, you know, of frustration of a certain kind. And in a time, an idea came to my mind of something, of a story I wanted to tell. And I decided, you know, why not? But again, it didn't just happen because there had been many years, slightly perhaps, of practice. And if it was the non-profit drug aid, which I later co-founded, it was that we started, of course, 4 years ago, about 2019. But before the founding of that business, there was many expressions of that interest in terms of support that I was giving. And so there was a slight natural thing to how it
sort of evolved.
Yes. And so I think it's what makes it, I guess, interesting is that it's not every time or every season of my life that I have been able to do all these many things at once. I think for me, there has been literally like a coming together. There were times when, you know, I was prioritizing other things of interest, and there were times when the time afforded. So for example, before this acquisition of this company, which I sit in now, it was a lot more strenuous for me time-wise.
Right.
Now, because it's an international firm, there's some level of time bandwidth because of the matrix lines and the reporting lines and just the responsibility that is somewhat different, that has now afforded me to do a little bit more of those different expressions. And so it's kind of morphed into those points together. But there has been a central theme around everything that I do, sort of driven from a kind of, you know, impact that I want to see. And
so what's that central theme? What would you say it is?
I think I used to be not used to be, I've always been, and still I'm very curious about inequalities.
Right, okay.
And it has always just bothered me from the time I was little, just not understanding why, you know, there's this imbalance in welfare, in the status, in life, and just many questions that you have.
Right.
And coming to this place where I guess not having an answer to that, but understanding or believing that if we have the opportunity, we should be a blessing. Where we have an advantage, we should pass
be the solution.
Being the solution
to the problem that you see.
Yes, and having just a heart for impact. And so what I find looking through the thread of all these things that I do is that there's a lot of bridging. So if it's in the stories that I'm telling with Osamede, the story is a story of bridging. It's about communities, everything to try and bring shared prosperity. With work in the non-profits, it's also, you know, that everybody deserves healthcare, you know, and so if we have, we give. And so, and even with finance, not only what I do, but what I plan, you know, the expressions of financial work I want to do, it always has that theme of, you know, how do we support the less, the people with less opportunity to come to slight, you know, equilibrium. Maybe we cannot achieve full equilibrium, but we do try to bring that balance out.
Yes, so this is what we're balancing success across life spectrum. But like, something very important that I want to draw out for our viewers at home is we're listening to Lady Lilian and a life of someone who is not only making income as an entrepreneur, but also impact and influence. There are three ways to earn. You can earn income, yes, which is why you're an entrepreneur. You can earn impact and influence. But don't forget that at the base, at the heart of it all is the value that you are bringing, right, to the table. And it must always drive what it is that you do. Otherwise, if you're not about value, what will tend to happen is frustrations will set in. As Lilian was speaking, I heard her speak about fulfillment, okay? And that's, another thing I wanted to draw out really is leaving a little too early. And I want us to speak about that. So it's a double-barrel question. I want you to talk about the challenges you faced. A lot of people leave a career path or an industry because of challenges or because they feel they've had enough. And it's okay to have enough and go on to something else. But let's dwell on leaving a little too early and overcoming challenges.
Okay, I think it's very important that you ask that question, Ifeoma, because we are actually, if you look at the season that we're in, you find that there's this culture now of quick solutions. The impatience is running out. People want, quick fixes. The staying power is reducing. And so I think it's an important, concept to dwell on. That there is something about allowing the process to season us.
Right.
Because when you look at, and I feel grateful that I stayed on.
Yes.
Even through times when these things, because when I look at the whole thing, I see that a lot of the skills, of course, that I bring to these other things I do were from the base of the career path that I was forming. Do you see what I mean? So that there's something about just, not rushing into things, and not just even about running out, is about, how you have lots of people who want to, I feel like when you volunteer or do other things, that it gives you an opportunity to know what you really like to do.
Yeah.
And that is also, when you talk about staying power, we mustn't jump just for jumping's sake. It is what makes sense. This had been my base, and this is upon which, a lot of the things I wanted to do, I was not ready to go into them. When I really look back now in retrospect, I wasn't ready.
Right.
Even financially perhaps, or even, there's so much that the journey still required me to stay on for.
Right.
And so there's wisdom, I think, in just sometimes looking a little...
Simmering,
and allowing time to reveal itself. And for some people, it's clear that it's time to move, but there's a lot of learning to go. And sometimes I always ask people that, have you finished learning on this path?
Yes. When we were speaking earlier, we're talking about life being about learning, unlearning, and relearning. So there are a couple of things I gleaned from what Lilian has said to us today. We're still on, but I just want to drop these nuggets as we go along. It's important. I'm sure some of us are taking notes, even though we have resources beyond the show. The first thing she spoke about was learning, research. This thing that seems glamorous from the outside, going into it. Now, when you step your foot into it, is it something you want to stay with? Yeah. Then you get to a point where you've been in it for a while. And the question now becomes, am I going to go further, or am I stopping at this point and pivoting? We'll be right back after this very short break. Welcome back. We are still speaking to Mrs. Lilian Olubi. Lilian, one very important question I have. You have talked us through your journey, but I just wonder, you sit on boards. You're the chief executive officer of a financial firm, service company. Am I correct?
Yes.
You run a non-profit. You are a creative with Osamede. Oh my God. How do you ensure balance and effectiveness across these diverse roles?
So it's this age-long topic of balance,
Yes.
Ifeoma. And I think that the way I would like to answer that firstly is that balance for me starts at knowing what success means to me. And I think I have taken time to interrogate that, and I'm satisfied with what I conclude to be success. And so it's first the starting point. And in that meter of the success measure, it is that I know the things that are most important. And so I guess you cannot speak about balance without speaking about prioritization.
Wow.
And for success, for example, I know the sensitivity of the balls that cannot drop, right? And for me also, balance has been using the seasons of my life as judiciously as I could. And so I'm careful not to also sort of lay a templated version of what balance is, because right now, even though I do what seems to be a lot of things is not every time I have been able to do all of these things at the same time. And so certain times there was priority where priority was given. And so when I look at the season of my life, for example, where I was, when my husband and I were waiting for children, it was an opportunity for me to advance myself academically. And so there was a lot of reading, a lot of professional exams, there was a lot of so on. So having my children, there was actually a time of stepping out. There was a season where I was literally at home, stay-at-home mom for almost 3 years. And there was a season where there was opportunity to help people, as I had already discussed, in different areas, and I was doing those things, loving it. And then there's this season where work, as I mentioned, has permitted, and then you can now find, there's more time to hone a lot of these items and work that we do. But I haven't done it alone, Balance to me looks like delegation.
Right.
Through my career trajectory, I have brought, I guess, that mindset of leadership, effective leadership to everything that I have done, realizing I cannot do everything on my own. And so I have been conscious about building relationships now that, I have seen the value of in everything that I've done. And so a lot of what I do now has been looking for people, to help, find those, bring those expressions to life, so to speak. And so I'm not literally, operational in everything at every season.
Okay.
But these are things that I love, and I'm able to envision them, I'm able to run with them, I'm able to, see them through to execution. Also having the...
You need to hold the thoughts. Yes. You are feeding me, and I just have to hold the thought. So, if you were listening to Lilian, she used 2 words, prioritization and delegation. Okay. So in prioritizing, right, she said that she painted, or she knew the picture of success. So perhaps she knew the picture of success in family life, yeah?
Yes.
And across the different, let's call them pillars.
Yes.
The next thing she did, if you are delegating, it means you are working with a team, was successfully delegate, i.e. develop the teams. So I'm sure with Osamede's production, there's a team.
Of course.
On the finance side of things, there's a team.
Yes.
Now, if she had a clear vision across board for what success meant in all of these diverse career paths, and she shared effectively, she spoke about effective leadership, this now ensued or resulted in successful delegation. I want you to speak to this, Lilian, so that we sort of educate our female leaders on this notion of jack of all trades, multipreneur. What's your take on that?
My take is that everybody's path is distinct, and we must never make that mistake to see or to try and streamline or make templates out of people's journeys.
It's been wonderful, wonderful speaking to you, and if we sat here, we could go on for hours. But ladies, I'm sure that you have gleaned strategies in your pursuit of excellence, whether you are on your way to the C-suite or in your entrepreneurial venture. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to Lilian today. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Please stay tuned for our next segment, our coaching segment, for more insightful tips on powerful leadership. Welcome to this coaching segment of Transform Her. Today we're going to be discussing a very important topic in leadership, and that is respect. Now, respect is the foundation of effective leadership. Respect can be defined as recognizing the dignity, perspectives, and contribution of all team members. As a leader, you are dealing with teams or people. And so the fact that you are the leader does not mean that the perspective or opinions of your team members are not important. Let's take a deeper look at the impact of respectful leadership. It enhances team morale and motivation. It fosters a positive and inclusive work environment, and it encourages open communication. I once heard a leader ask if it is better to be feared than respected. Well, in my opinion, it's better that people respect you, because that's the way you can influence your team positively. Well, I'll tell you how the cycle works. The positive cycle of respect is that when you respect people, you motivate them. That motivation influences them to productivity. And when the output is great, it goes back to respect for you as the leader. And of course, the organization grows. But the cost of disrespect is an absolute misstep for anyone who wants to be an influential, remarkable, and memorable leader. The first thing is it erodes trust and communication. The second thing is it decreases team morale and, of course, productivity. And finally, it leads to a very toxic work environment. Have you ever heard about the SAD syndrome? And so what happens is that when you are disrespectful as a leader, it causes people to be sad. Not sad in the sense of the meaning of the word, okay? Stress leads to anxiety, which ultimately leads to depression. So SAD, sad. Perhaps that's even an expatiated definition of the word sad. Now, the negative impact of disrespect, just like we saw the positive, is that when you are disrespectful as a leader, it demotivates. And like I said earlier, people work out of coercion, not because they're influenced positively. And when you coerce people to work, right, what you get is 30 days make one pay. So they're simply working because they're earning a salary, not because they respect you or the business or the objectives of the business. So they don't key into your vision. And so when people are coerced to work, there's always poor performance. The output is always poor performance. And so it's important that we build a culture of respect as leaders. And what are the strategies that we can adopt? Empathy and active listening. Later on, in other episodes in the show, I'm sure I'll take you through active listening. But active listening means that you listen to understand and value the perspectives of your team members. There must be open and positive communication. Foster an environment where people can give feedback, where it's encouraged, okay? I was speaking to one of my dear friends a few days ago, and I was sharing with her how I remember the book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Steve Covey, where he said 1 + 1 can make 3. And so your opinion as a leader and the opinion of one team member, when you sit together, can actually forge a third or even better opinion or path. You know, leadership, as I have said previously on the show, is about learning, unlearning, and relearning. That's what life is about generally. No leader is repository of all knowledge. No one man is. So as a leader, it is important that you encourage open communication. Leading by example. Demonstrate respectful behavior in all interactions. Case in point, the government director who felt he was the be-all and end-all. Now, we must also acknowledge and value contributions, regularly recognizing the efforts of our team members and showing deep appreciation. What's the call to action on this segment of TransformHer? Is self-reflect on how you are engaging your team members. Are you truly respectful? Do you listen to them? Do you treat them as human beings, i.e., do you treat them with dignity? Remember, you were once at the bottom of the ladder and somebody gave you an opportunity to grow. And something to mention very importantly, most leaders who have become coercive and, bitter, probably stems from when they were young themselves. Maybe they had bad bosses, so don't be that bad boss who creates terrible leadership. And then the next thing is you must adopt all of these strategies that we have spoken about today. I advise leaders to make sure that you have accountability partners. Have people who can check your behavior. A leader must have the courage to ask for feedback. You must have the humility to accept feedback even if it's negative, and the discipline to follow through with the changes that will make you a better leader. Until next time, thank you, and it's been fun taking you on this coaching segment.